Hello and welcome to all you golf listeners out there to the Golfing Greenkeeper podcast. I'm Steve Smith, your host, and there are a few things a-changing with this podcast. Welcome to episode number 23. A little intro to kick things off with episode number 23. We'll start off just by letting you know that I'm going to be rejigging the podcast format ever so slightly, just a little bit. I want to do that to try and give you, basically I want to make it the podcast is weekly, available to you every week. So instead of having a little bit of the longer format stuff where it goes for an hour and a half and whatnot, every 2 to 3 weeks, depending on how things are going, the idea is that I'm going to break it down so that I've got something coming out every week for you. And I want to try and work on the format where, it's more regular, so there's more things, it doesn't become real big long sagas. So essentially you don't go for too long, without anything happening to your listening ears. You can keep up to date with what I've got to say and what's going on in the Australian landscape of golf. And also because I'm getting quite a lot of news from around the country as well. So it's sort of starting to fill up some of the segments to make them a little bit longer. Like I said, the idea is to break up the podcast and restructure a little bit. So the idea is Walking the Fairways, which is the news segment. I want to be able to have that on its own every sort of second week to keep you up to date with what's going on, and that'll be joined with little bits and pieces of segments like the Greenkeepers Shed. They'll be coming around with some of those other segments like, some interviews that I've done in the past and the centre stage segment. Like I said, I want to give those ones that have got a little bit more length to them, a little bit more depth to them. I want to give them their own episode, as it were. So the idea is sort of every second week will be a Walking the Fairways with a little bit of news, and then every other week will be some of those other segments that have got a little bit more depth and more conversation, more interviews, and I can do it without making it really, really long and that you've got to break up and listen to them over time. So that's a little bit of the idea of the rejigging. And look, let's kick it off. To start things off, this one is going to be a Walking the Fairways segment. And let's get straight into it so we can get out there and enjoy the walk. So let's kick things off in Walking the Fairways. We set out into this beautiful springtime weather in the month of September, and let's just cast a gaze across the country and see what's going on out on the golf courses as we walk. Let's just kick it off and we'll head straight to the west coast of Australia, out into the black box that is Western Australia. Nobody goes in, nobody comes out. We don't actually know what goes on over there at the moment. They're locked the whole rest of the country out. But I have been fortunate enough to find a little peephole and see what is going on. And it starts off with an announcement that Links Kennedy Bay, which look, I'm sure if anyone knows golf over there in WA, you've heard of the Links Kennedy Bay. Now, the Links Kennedy Bay was originally designed by Michael Coate and Roger Mackay with the one and only Ian Baker Finch, and it's a fantastic golf course. Not that I've played it myself, but read a little bit about it, seen plenty of photos about it. It's a beautiful, beautiful looking track. Now, it is set to have a major redesign by none other than Graham Marsh Design. Yes, that's right, construction company McMahon's. Now, I mentioned McMahon's, as you've probably heard in the past, if you've listened to the podcast or seen my travels about. They're building the new Minnipai or Cannon Links golf course up in Brisbane for Brisbane City Council. McMahon's have won the project to carry out the redesign by Marsh and rebuild the course, which will involve changing around, if I'm being honest, it looks like about 90% of the original golf course. Now, look, thinking about it, that's probably a bit of a shame, to be fair, because this golf course has had unbelievable raps during its life as how enjoyable and how wonderful a golf course it is. So look, for anyone who's been fortunate enough to play it during its life as it was, and I can say that in past tense, that's now a memory. Keep that one up your sleeve because that will no longer happen. No one will be able to play it ever again. They have started work rebuilding the Links Kennedy Bay. So look, it's barely going to be a portion of the same course it was when it's completed of what it was. The new course is at the heart of a $425 million master planned Kennedy Bay coastal development. just to give you an idea of the scope of what's happening. That's a big deal, 425 mil. Not a small exercise. It's a big coastal development. They've worked through council. There's a lot of buildings going on that's going to be happening there for residential, and the golf course is at the heart of it, like I mentioned. So it's a big thing. It's not small, but Kennedy Bay is it's in its infancy of this whole new rebirth and rebuild. I've seen a small portion, or I shouldn't say a small portion, I've seen a portion of the overall plan, the master plan of the design of what's going on. And like I said, nearly all the golf course is going to be changed, and it's moving out into areas where it doesn't exist. It's not that they're rerouting the holes on the same land, it's actually moving to another piece of ground as well. So only a couple of holes are using the existing ground, and then the rest of it goes in another complete direction. So very interesting for such a massive change, and a golf course that's held a pretty good spot on the Australian golf lists because it's always been such a wonderful course with a wonderful name to it. So sad on one hand to see it go, but hopefully we'll be in for something very special when it's done. So that's the first one coming out of WA in the lockdown state that is over there on the other side of the country. Now, the other one I found a little bit of news about is Point Walter. Now, it's a little 9-hole golf course, and they've been doing a lot of stuff over the last little while too, just quietly. In addition to adding their new mini golf facility, which they've now got up and running, and it's been up and running for a little while, very popular by the looks. They've rebuilt their first tee complex of the 9-hole golf course, and it's a wonderful improvement to starting your round off. And look, I love a good first tee. I love a good first tee complex. I love it when they've got, even having nice landscaping gardens around it. That's what they've gone for at Point Walter here. They've used some magnificent grass trees around the xanthorrhoeas, around the first tee complex, these multi-trunked grass trees. You probably know what I'm talking about. I use them at Katoomba in a few locations. They are just majestic plants. Uniquely Australian, and look, they've dropped them in around the first tee complex in their tea gardens, and it looks fantastic. What a beautiful statement and a beautiful start to the first hole of the 9-hole complex at Point Walter. So something to, if you're local to let's face it, you can only be a local in WA because no one's allowed in and no one's allowed out, like I said. But if you know the course, if it's something that you get out there and enjoy, the little 9-holer that's there, or even the mini golf with the kids or with your friends, with your mates, who knows what, you just get out there and have fun. Point Walter is doing a few more changes still yet again, which is great to see over there in WA. We moved to Queensland, and I say move to Queensland because that's another one of those lockdown states that those that are in there are very fortunate and living life to the max. Everyone else is, we don't know what's going on really. No one can go in, no one can come out. Queensland's the same. Now, we go to Pelican Waters. Everyone knows Pelican Waters. We've all heard about Pelican Waters. Greg Norman designed golf course. It's got a wonderful bit of history up there in Queensland. Now, it's set for a major renovation, which will include more or less a full course redesign around an expanding residential component of the property. So it's a little bit like Links Kennedy Bay, and it's probably something that's happening in the COVID world. They can shut these courses down because there's not a great deal of international visitors happening. That I don't know a lot of the background of these residential complexes and these residential components of the properties in the resorts that they're part of, and the golf course property as well, but these two big-name properties are just basically carving it up and rebuilding. So it's going to be a big thing, like I said, similar to Kennedy Bay in WA. And the redesign is being done, once again, by Greg Norman Golf Course Design. So the same name is being involved. They'll still have their name to it, or Greg Norman will still have his name attached to it. But if you knew it, you won't know what it's like when it's going to reopen, because it's going to be totally different basically as well. Similar thing, totally different golf course. And they've actually started construction at the moment on holes 10, 11, 16, 17 and 18 of the old course. So if you know that golf course, I don't know it, never been there, but if you do, that's where their starter works with a few changing around. They're talking things like holes going in reverse directions around some of the holes that I think they start the back 9, like 10 and 11, or 9 and 10, or something along those lines. So some of the things I've read, like I said, I don't know it, so I can't really explain that too well. But it's a big deal. So in a sense, another shame to see Pelican Waters go, but they're looking to rejuvenate it and breathe some new life into that golf resort up there in Queensland. We head to Links Hope Island, and I've mentioned that the work that's been done there with the new 9th hole, new driving range. Well, that driving range now has been open for about a month, and it's really getting a great deal of use by its members up there and on the Gold Coast, which is great to see. It's obviously backing up the decision they made to put the driving range in, a full-size driving range, which Links Hope Island never had in the past, and changing around to put a little par 3 in for their 9th hole, full water carry. So the driving range, like I said, it's been open now, which is great to see. Plenty of people out there using it, enjoying it. Members are obviously loving it. One thing that I've heard, but it's not confirmed from what I hear, the Professional Long Drive Association of Australia, the PLDA, will be holding their championships, I believe, there in November. So that's the Australian version of the big long drive comps we see in the States. That is going to be, it looks like, in November. Look, if you're at the Gold Coast, why wouldn't you want to go and see what that's all about? I've never seen the Australian version. I didn't even know we had one. But like I said, I've heard that it looks like in November they'll be hosting it up there at Links Hope Island in their brand new driving range. So probably a bit of an opening thing, to get a bit of fanfare, to get some spectators in to see what's going on, get the long drive comp out there and see if they can just blast it. Usually past the end of the driving range. I think, is that the goal? I'm not sure if it's a goal, but maybe it is. But if you like that sort of thing, it's one to keep an eye out for. But you heard it here first, folks. Well, I don't know if it's first or not, but I'm going to claim it as first. So that's what I've heard. Let's see what's going on. But the new stuff is up and running at Hope Island there on the Gold Coast in Queensland. Heading into New South Wales, my home state, so there's always plenty of news coming out of New South Wales. There's a lot going on at the moment because, as we know, golf hasn't really shut down, and there's plenty of clubs that have got high turnover. There's lots of money flowing through golf clubs at the moment in New South Wales, so they're actually getting on with quite a few things and looking to continue to improve their golf courses, which is great to see. And I'm going to start in Sydney, and we'll go straight to Woollahra Golf Club, which is next door to Royal Sydney Golf Club in the eastern suburbs of the city. And look, they're moving through some more works. They did a little bit of work rebuilding. I think it was their 6th green from memory there a number of months ago. And they're putting some new eco bunker edging in as part of their rebuilding of their greenside bunker on the par 3 9th hole that they have. It's a 9-hole golf course, and it's a public access course. But eco bunker edging is that new. It's sort of a faux riveted bunker edging, if that's the right way of saying it. It's stacked, layered synthetic turf. It's recycled product. Good use of recycled materials to get it out there and put a semi-permanent edge in. Actually looks pretty sharp. It does a pretty good job for what it is. And you might have seen it around in a few places, but certainly one of the more recent ones here in New South Wales was work done to Killara Golf Club with Harley Cruise did the redesign there, and the golf club wanted to look at using something quite stable, long-term, and they went with the eco bunker edging as part of their bunker style and design that they put in there at Killara, which is one of the more affluent private clubs in Sydney. Very, very long history in Sydney as well, one of the older clubs in the country. And they've used it there, but it's starting to get out into a few more courses as they see that, you know, it's a product that's going to work for them. So Woollahra have put it in on one of their greenside bunkers, like I mentioned, they're rebuilding. So it's going to be good to see. Probably a good addition to the golf course, public course. So, you know, not as much money flowing around for regular maintenance all the time to stay on top of bunker edgings. And they've seen some of the, you know, the longer term stuff and how this eco bunker edging works and what it sort of can do for them as a club. They feel it's the right product. So, look, that's a positive move for Woollahra, and we look to see that finished product come out soon on the par 3 9th, which is good to see. Now, we don't go too far away. We go a little bit further south from Woollahra to St Michael's Golf Club, still on the eastern suburbs of Sydney. where Ben Chambers from Centerline Golf has just completed rebuilding the second and third green complexes and basically the best part of the golf holes there at St Michael's. And they're now all grassed up, all turf surrounds, all green seeded, and they're growing in very, very nicely. Ready for a late spring would be my guess, my estimate, to have those greens in play. They're already cutting them. They've had a few cuts on the green surfaces with some walk behinds, and they look sharp. Good growth coming along at the back end of this winter, which hasn't been too cold, so that's a positive. And look, we're going to see these things come up and are out. Good bunker shape, some good. It's intricate. It looks entertaining. It looks fun. It looks interesting to the eye as well. So we'll see a little bit more of this stuff come out from St Michael's. No doubt they'll have a little bit of photography stuff happening on their social media pages if you follow St Michael's, and if you're a player there at St Mick's or you're a member, you'll have seen what's going on now, and you're probably wondering how long to go. Like I said, my guess is probably late spring into somewhere around the November mark would be my guess that these things will be up and open for play, which is a good thing because they've, it always takes a good few months through winter to get this stuff happening. So positive moves there happening at St Michael's, and good to see these greens finally get done and ready for play before too long. Now we go to the northern beaches of Sydney to Manly Golf Club. So we cross the Harbour Bridge, heading up to the north to Manly Golf Club, and not so long ago they'd completed. It was a bit more maintenance greenkeeping work as opposed to reconstruction work, and they've been sand slitting or sand grooving their fairways. Now, what that basically entails, it's got a pretty unique machine. It's a tractor-pulled machine. It's very odd to sort of see. It's got these big discs and things that basically run vertical narrow trenches slicing through the fairways. It's where it's mainly used, areas of poor drainage, and they get through the first sort of 100 to probably 150 mil. If not, it's a varying depth as well. And it basically, as it slices through the fairways, it'll fill those those slits that it sliced through with sand. And what that does is that keeps a section of porous soil, free draining sand, as it were, from the surface down to the lower soil profiles, being mainly at sand. So it cuts through all the organic matter that's built up over a period of time as the fairways grow. You get organic matter material accumulate, root density, all those sorts of things start to build up, and you get an area in the soil profile that doesn't drain as well. And some of those areas, those broad, low-lying areas of Manly, and it's on a bit of a floodplain area. It was once a swamp before it was a golf course. And those low-lying areas have not been draining so well in recent times. And this basically will open up all that surface on all the fairways to drain nearly straight away while you're standing there while it's raining. Now, it's a pretty big deal. It's not a fast exercise. It's something that takes a number of days to do. But like I said, it's very, very worthwhile, and we're starting to see more and more places look into this type of machinery and into this sand grooving or sand slitting. Now, to give you an example of what it can do, Manly recently received about 70-odd mil of rain in 3 days. So that's a fair amount of rain. And because it's slow and steady, you would normally expect that amount of rainfall to drain quite well on a sandy, soiled site. But Manly has, like I mentioned, they've had a few dramas where it's not doing that anymore. It takes a lot longer for that amount of rain to drain through the surface portion of the soil profile. Now, 70 mil in 3 days, the next day at Manly, and that's nearly 3 inches. So the next day at Manly, after the rain had stopped, all the surface water was gone. It did not stay hanging around on the fairways for a couple of days afterwards. It literally went straight through the surface, straight down in the lower soil profile sands, and just disappears and drained vertically perfectly well. And that's the idea of it. So very, very good thing for Manly to do. And like I mentioned, a few other clubs are looking into this sort of thing, and it just makes a massive difference if you've got surface water in sort of your low-lying areas of some of your fairways. If you're on a good sand base, profile. So that's what's going on at Manly. They've now completed all their work, and it looks like the machine is actually now, I shouldn't say the machine, but Pymble Golf Club on Sydney's North Shore is doing a similar thing. They're getting the sand grooving out and getting on with it there as well to do their fairways. I'm not sure if it's the same machine, same contractor, but it's straight after Manly, so I'm going to say it probably is. But they're doing it as well. So look, you're seeing these top-end golf courses, and that's the way it works. You know, the Royal Sydneys of the world, the Royal Melbournes of the world, you know, these sorts of upper echelon courses, the private clubs, the Peninsula Kingswoods, they're on the cutting edge, pardon the pun, but they're on the cutting edge of technology and equipment, and some of this stuff, it's been around for a few years now, of course, but you're starting to see them use it more regularly. They're seeing the benefits of it, so they just get them back. And you'll slowly see them filter to the next tier of golf courses and to some of your more open, accessible public golf courses as well in time. And before you know it, some of the council-run golf courses will be looking at using these machinery or this type of machinery as well. So positive things from sand slitting and sand grooving. And if you have seen some images of it, or if you're not sure and you've seen the aftermath of long-running, you know, whitish or pale-coloured sand running down lengths of fairways and stuff, that's what's happened. That's what they've done, and it basically helps with that infiltration and percolation of the water moving through the soil profile, which is usually impeded at that upper portion of your root zone. That's what's going on. So that's what they've done at Manly, and they're very, very happy with the results when they've had that amount of water just recently disappear in a heartbeat. Now we go to some new greens that are being designed by Craig Parry. Still in Sydney, and we stay on the North Shore, and it's at Wakehurst Golf Club. Now, I've played Wakehurst, lovely golf course overlooking Manly Dam on beautiful north-facing aspect of the hillside just off the Wakehurst Parkway. It's a very unique golf course. They've had Craig in doing some redesigning of some of their greens, 4 greens in total, and they've now been completed, and it won't be too long before they're in play, much similar to that of St Michael's, basically a little bit behind St Mick's in terms of the dates when they started and therefore the dates that they'll be in play. I haven't been there myself because I can't travel there and I don't have a specific reason to go there. It's not a public place that I can walk through. It's a private golf course, private land. From what I have seen, some of the photos I've seen where they look to have rebuilt the greens, they've rebuilt them in the same location pretty much, more or less as they previously were, but they've been increased in size from what I can gather. And no doubt there will be some surface details for golfers to sort of manage and to challenge the golfers and negotiate when they're putting on the holes on the green surfaces. You know, 9 and 18, 2 of the 4 greens. The other ones are 10 and I think it's 14. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure it's 14 as well. But 9 and 18 were previously bunkerless greens. They both now have a bunker on each of them, green side, one on the right on the 9th and one on the left on the 18th. And it'll be interesting to see how that integrates into the challenge of the hole. But yeah, look, it's some new changes. Craig Parry's certainly getting out there to a few golf courses as well these days. And Wakehurst is another one that he's been doing some work on. So be interesting to see some of the feedback. I know some people that are members there at Wakehurst, so I'll hopefully hear from them and see what the thoughts are on the final results of what's been done there at Wakehurst. But new stuff, new greens is always a good thing. It's a good exercise to have, and they've decided to kick it off with those 4, like I said, 9, 18, 10 and 14 at Wakehurst. So new stuff happening, and it won't be too long before they're open for play as well. Now, I mentioned one, if you saw some of my stuff on Instagram not too long ago, I did an IGTV video of Palm Beach. Now, that's a golf course that Craig Parry was involved with for the redesign of their greens there, some of their greens around the golf course. It's a 9-hole golf course on the very northern tip of Sydney's northern beaches, public access, and it was a public space that you can walk through, and I went there early one morning for a morning walk, as we're allowed to do here in Sydney lockdown, and wanted to take the opportunity as I was walking past the course to see some of the new work that had been recently completed at Palmy. And yeah, look, I made a few comments on my IGTV, and if you're interested, you can go and have a look at them. It's probably about 10 or 12 posts ago now. It was about a month or so ago that I did it to have a look at. And I was just a little bit disappointed. I thought Palm Beach was probably going to put itself in a position where it was going to sit itself ahead of the curve, stand out from the crowd, do something a little bit different, something that was going to be more fun, more entertaining. I was a little bit critical of what the end result was. It looks like they haven't really done a great deal to the old green surfaces, and I stand by those comments. I don't know what the design brief was from the club either, so I don't know a lot of the background to why or how they got the results they did, and that's a portion of my information that I'm missing. But I can still stand there and still make a comment about that. I think they may have missed the mark, and the club will always talk to the architect will advise the club. Not sure how they came to be with that end result, but that's what they've got, and I think they're a little bit flat, a little bit featureless, and where I thought they could have become some sort of, like I said, a standout from the crowd, a bit of a driving force for a bit of entertaining golf. I think what they've done is they've spent a lot of money on getting a new green surface with new grass type and good draining soil profile, no doubt, but they've basically kind of, in my opinion, put back sort of kind of what was there. It's a bit bland and a bit boring. And on a 9-hole golf course, we're looking to see golf courses try and integrate a bit of excitement, a bit of fun, a bit of entertainment, some challenge into the putting surfaces and blending in from the surrounds around the green as well, giving players a few options, something interesting to negotiate, something to think about on your way to the golf hole. Doesn't need to be difficult, just needs to be entertaining. And I think they probably have, and I'll stand by it, and I'll say I think they missed the mark. Nothing wrong with Palm Beach as a golf course. It's still enjoyable to go out there and play golf, but I just think they probably could have done it a little bit better for having spent a fair bit of cash rebuilding basically what will ultimately be all of their golf greens. So they've still got some work to do, and I haven't seen all of the greens yet, so there's still some stuff there that could come out and be a little bit more fun. But the couple that I did see, I saw 3 of the greens. I was a little bit flat by what I saw. Again, pardon the pun for the flat putting surfaces that there were. So, I missed the mark. Missed the mark for me. But if you're a player there at Palmy, and I had a few people comment, say that they play Palm Beach regularly, they still enjoy Palm Beach, and I'm not taking that away from anyone. It's a wonderful location, beautiful little 9-hole golf course to go and get a break away from life and enjoy some time with some friends and the challenge of golf in itself. So that's a good thing for Palm Beach, and good to upgrade to new green surfaces nonetheless. Now, sticking with the North Shore, there's plenty of stuff happening in Sydney's North Shore and Northern Beaches, and I probably didn't realise it until I was making all these notes, but we stick to not far from Palm Beach to Bayview Golf Club as well, and they've recently completed a new concrete path on their golf course. Now, normally I don't really talk too much about path completion and changes to the golf course and improvements. They do have a lot of golf carts used at Bayview. It's got a really big hill at one end of the golf course, and they've got a bit of an older membership as well, so quite a few carts get used. And there is a challenging section walking from the 3rd green to the 4th tee, and the path that they put in, a brand new concrete path, it's about 245 metres long, they say. So a big concrete path, a lot of money has gone into that, don't worry, because concrete paths are not cheap. And the other one they did was from the 12th green to the 13th tee as well. Now, on top of this, these 2 new paths, in particular the one from the 3rd green to the 4th tee, what I can gather is that there once talked about land development in the middle of that little front section of holes from 4 to 7, which included a bit of a course redesign at that point on top of the hill. I can gather that will not be happening now. So there was talk that they were going to be redesigning holes 4 to 7. There was a land release happening there. They were going to sell to a developer, and they were going to do some sort of over 55s, I think, retirement development. Now, it was vehemently opposed by local residents. So my guess is that with the club spending a lot of money, it's not $5,000, it's not $10,000 to put a concrete path in that's nearly 250 metres long. It's a lot of money. My guess is that the club spending that sort of money to put in a permanent path, that says to me that they've abandoned the concept of that development, and that it must have just been basically blocked, and there was no way it was going to get through. So I dare say that any more changes to Bayview is not happening as per their once original master plan, And I think what you see now is the finished product. You don't, like I said, you don't go and put a path in that's 250 odd metres long just to dig it back up in 5 years' time if you're going to rebuild those holes. So my guess is that it's been abandoned, that redesign for that section of the course, and this is it. They've finished now all their works, I believe, to Bayview. We have a final finished course, I think. I don't know that they're going to be doing much more. I could be wrong. If they do, I'll keep you up to date for sure. But that's certainly that portion is done with. So a couple of permanent things in place at Bayview and some no more changes, I'm sure, to that section of the course. We move around a little bit further, but still on Sydney's North Shore to Pymble Golf Club. Like I mentioned, they'd been doing the sand grooving. Well, they've been quietly busy during this lockdown. Very quiet. It's a very private golf course, Pymble. Not many people can get on there if you're not a member. It's a very private club. They've been doing a full redesign and rebuild, which has been completed of their par 3 15th hole, and also a redesign rebuild of their second green complex and redoing the second tee surfaces while they're there. Now, I'm not certain as to which bunker liner product they're using out at Pymble. On the 15th, they've been doing a heap of bunkers, new bunkers. They look pretty cool looking things, and I'm not sure, but they are using, and I can confirm that they are doing things properly, and they're installing a bunker liner product to ensure those bunkers are very well built indeed, and they certainly will be draining perfectly nicely too as part of their reconstruction. It's nothing better than doing things properly and seeing clubs do them properly. So if you're a member at Pymble or if you're someone who's been there before and played it and you're looking to go back when you get half a chance, you'll see that the 15th hole is going to be a different green complex as a par 3. It's probably one of their little feature holes too, no doubt. And the second green as well as a different green site, green complex altogether. So a few things happening and a few changes there at Pymble. Don't often talk about a place like Pymble. Like I said, a very private golf club, but they've been doing a few things there now with their new superintendent, David Stone, who hasn't been there too long either. So he's looking to be part of all these works moving forward. Now we head down the south coast of New South Wales, away from Sydney now, out of Sydney Metro. We go to Mollymook Golf Club down the south coast of New South Wales. Now, Mollymook has got a very good name, and that golf club has 2 golf course sites. It's got the Hilltop 18-hole golf course, which is a magnificent golf course with a very, very good name. Holds a lot of local championship-style events as well down for the south coast of New South Wales. And they've also got their what they call the beachside golf course, which is a 9-hole golf course, sort of more in the middle of towards beachside. Well said, Steve. It's near the beach. Let's go with that. Now, the beachside golf course is going through some pretty huge works at the moment. The design work, they're basically redesigning the full 9 holes from scratch. The design work was done by Justin Trott from Programmed Turnpoint, and they'll be carrying out the construction as well, Programmed Turnpoint. They'll be carrying out the construction to rebuild the 9-hole golf course under that new design works as well. So, like most redesigns, this isn't, it's not a new redesign. It's not something that happened last year. The first version of this redesign was looked at by the club back in 2006, and they did that with Ross Watson then. But unfortunately, at the time, the club soon abandoned the project. I think in around 2007, not too far afterwards, they just sort of walked away from it and said, it's not going to happen. We're not going to do it now, so let's just shelve it and see what happens in time. Fast forward to today, to the last couple of years, and the club have now decided that they really are in need to address, and it's built, the redesign's around a lot of safety concerns of the golf course, and they've decided that they need to be addressed. That's got to happen, and it looks like they may well be looking into doing a few other things down there as well while they're doing it, if that's the right way of saying it. So the essence is for basically a bit of an exciting 9-hole golf course. The existing 9-hole course will be turned into a short course, effectively. So think like Bugle Run, which I've talked about down in Tassie. You hear about these short courses. Basically, they're looking to rejig the course where it's going to have 8 par 3s and 1 short par 4 in the 9-hole loop. Now, this addresses, like I said, some of their safety problems around the course boundaries. They neighbour one of the main roads in and out of town, and also a number of houses around a couple of the other boundaries on course too. So they're trying to deal with those things as well while they're here rebuilding the course and offering something fun and something new. And that's part of the goal as well in rebuilding this to a short course, as it were. They want to offer something new, something a little bit different than just another 9-hole golf course that's been there for a long time. Now, if you want to play a full-size course, basically they're saying go to the Hilltop, go to their great big 18-hole fantastic course up the road. But if you're looking for something fun or a little bit of a quicker version of the game, you can go to the beachside course for that bit of fun. And some of the other stuff they're talking about, which I mentioned, is things like they want to offer, they're looking to build in the future after this redesign. There's a bit of space there that they're looking to do a mini golf course as well. Which is fun for kids, as we know, getting them into the game, family groups, party groups, that sort of thing. Also simulators, a new pro shop. So there's a little bit more to it as well. It's look, if you're a local and you're a regular of it, it's probably something that you just don't quite get maybe. But this is the sort of rejigging that golf courses are looking to do, because there's a want out there for it, people. There's a want for these fun short courses to have a lot of fun with a group of people, group of friends, fun little competitions, get out there and play golf, test your different type of a game of golf as well. Add mini golf for the kids, for the family, for parties. Get the simulators in for all weather fun as well. All this sort of stuff. We were looking at Katoomba in 2008. We were looking at we ended up putting a simulator in back in 2008. I won't say we were ahead of the game, but we were probably ahead of the game without sounding stupid. But now you're starting to see more and more places look into these things. So great to see. I'm going to say it's a positive kick, a big positive goal for Mollymook, and I look forward to seeing the outcome down the south coast there at Mollymook. Into Queanbeyan. Now, we're still in New South Wales. There is so much going on in New South Wales. We go to Queanbeyan, which is near the New South Wales ACT border, and they're doing huge upgrades to their golf course irrigation system by installing a new Torolink system. There's a lot of new capabilities with any of these new irrigation systems these days, and the new tech available is just fantastic for superintendents and their teams. So this will most likely be a massive game changer for Queanbeyan. I'm telling you right now, if you're a visitor of Queanbeyan, if you're a member at Queanbeyan, you've seen the trench work, you've seen the upgrades, you've seen what's going on out on course physically with them doing stuff to the irrigation system. This is what's happening. These are good things, and it's probably about time that they've got an upgrade for it. Most courses will wait until they're basically irrigation systems dilapidated, it's falling to pieces. It costs way too much to try and keep ad hoc Band-Aid fixing it. And no doubt this will be a big game changer, certainly for their team maintaining the course, but ultimately it will be for the presentation of the golf course, in dealing with difficult times throughout the year with lower rainfall and long gaps between good rainfall as well. So that's part of the puzzle. I don't know their water supply at Queanbeyan, but certainly having the infrastructure to put the water out is a really, really big key, and being able to do it properly and efficiently, which is the main reason these things are put in, these irrigation systems, is absolutely priceless. So good stuff happening at Queanbeyan, and very positive to hear that they're getting on with spending a bit of money putting in a new irrigation system. But wait, it continues. We continue to continue. We're continuing. While we continue on, we head up the north coast of New South Wales, and bear with me because there's so much happening in New South Wales. Like I said, we head up north to the mid-north coast to Coffs Harbour Golf Club, the 27-hole facility that is the main track in the middle of Coffs Harbour. Beautiful spot there, just by the airport, sandy location, sensational track, good history, well regarded. They've been busy rebuilding some of their bunkers on course, and they've been doing it, the reconstruction of those bunkers, with the installing of a bunker liner, which I do continue to tell you that I love. And they're going with custom bind there at Coffs Harbour in for their bases to make sure, it's an insurance policy, to make sure that their bunkers are going to drain perfectly well for as long as possible. So that separates the bunker sand between the soil base or the sandy base below, so they don't mix. You don't get this contamination of the bunker sand, ultimate discoloration in a very quick time frame, and you ensure that the bunkers will drain as well as possible for as long as possible. So it's a great investment by the golf club, and like I said, they've gone with custom bind, and it's on a few of their bunkers that they've been moving through there at Coffs. So if you're looking to get away in the out of New South Wales, out of Sydney into the regional areas, as soon as lockdown lifts, if you're absolutely tonguing for a getaway and you're going to head up the mid-north coast, I'm sure plenty of people will be. You'll see some of the new work that's been going on there at Coffs and their bunkers, which is great to see. Good stuff moving forward at Coffs Harbour, and Justin Sheehan is the superintendent there. Justin's he's a wonderful operator, been around for a long time. I've known Justin from many years ago when I was a young apprentice up in the Blue Mountains, and good to see Justin still in the game. We stay up the mid-north coast, but just a touch south of Coffs, and we go to one of my favourite golf courses there in Tallwoods Country Club. Now, they are having a field day at Tallwoods, a field day. They've got a new toy to use out on course. And I say toy loosely because it's a very expensive machine, but it is a fantastic piece of machinery, a fantastic tool to have in the shed of any golf course, and it's called a Ventrac. Now, the Ventrac is a multi-attachment drivable machine. All sorts of different attachments you can put on it. You can put on aerating attachments, you can put on blowers, you can put on mowers, you can put on all sorts of renovation equipment, all sorts of different things, right? That's the beauty of this particular machine. I'm seeing it get out onto more and more golf courses because of its fantastic versatility. But Tallwoods have finally been able to deliver their maintenance crew led by Superintendent Andrew, and they've been able to get them a Ventrac machine of their very own with a few attachments. And one of them is also a wonderful, fantastic piece of equipment. The attachment is called an aerovator attachment, and I absolutely love an aerovator. It was probably one of the favourite implements I would use on my golf course at Katoomba. Even when I was working at Wentworth Falls, we get an aerovator out there, and the way that it works to aerate some of the really hard-packed surfaces on your fairways, tees, whatever areas in the rough, the tee carries from the tee to the fairway, we would aerate. I'd just go nuts, and we'd aerate everything. Everything that we could aerate that we would do once a year that doesn't get the walk-behind coring machines or tining machines. This is heavy-duty stuff. And Tallwoods have got their Ventrac, and they're out there doing their fairways. And from what I hear, they're doing the fairways that these things haven't been done for years and years and years. So all I can tell you is no one really knows when they were last aerated. So all I can tell you is the result from this work is going to be fantastic. Those roots of the turf on those fairways are going to get a boost of oxygen. And they're going to go ballistic. Now, you combine that with a forecast of La Nina, which means we're going to get maybe above average rainfall on the east coast of the country, and I talked about that, I think it was in my last podcast episode. Rest assured, by the back end of summer, you're going to see some fantastic fairways at Tallwoods. Hopefully it doesn't get over-rained, which is always, it's a fine edge. We're walking a fine line between wishing for rain and getting too much, which is what happened last year to a lot of places, sadly. We hope that doesn't happen this year, but they've been able to get stuck into aerating fairways at Tallwoods. We hope they get some good rains up there, up the north coast, and certainly across the east coast of the country again in the growing season. And they are going to have some sensational fairways at Tallwoods on the back of being able to aerate so well and such a wide part of the golf course. And it's their own machine. They're not hiring this. It's not something that they're going to, have to get in for a short period of time and they can only do certain areas. This is a machine that's going to get hammered by use, which is why you buy them. It's going to be used on so many areas of that golf course, I've got no doubt, because, trust me, once you use it and you see it, you just want to use it more. So good stuff to hear happening at Tallwoods, and it continues to move forward, which I do love to hear about Tallwoods. Big fan, looking forward to going back there one day before too long. Now we stay up still on the mid-north coast and we go to Tuncurry Golf Club. Now Tuncurry, look, we go to Tuncurry. Tuncurry's got a wonderful name. It's one that I wish I've played. Sadly, I haven't played, but they've been doing quite a bit of work there, and they've finally recently completed laying their newly constructed tees with my one and only favourite grass, Santa Ana Cooch. They've finally got these tees up. They've rebuilt, leveled out some of the tees on the golf course, ready for turfing. And now that it's just getting into the start of springtime, they've got that turf, they've got that Santa Ana Cooch, and they are slapping it down on all these places, ready to grow in, ready to have beautiful, slick, green carpet tees in the playing time of spring before too long. So good stuff there finally at Tuncurry. They've been able to get hold of their turf. And like I said, there's a bit happening at Tuncurry. They're building a new clubhouse there as well. Part of that as well, which I only recently found out, part of the new clubhouse at Tuncurry is they're also going to house a regional museum, a regional version of the Australian Golf Heritage Society Museum. So you're going to have a bit of history up there on the mid-north coast of New South Wales from a golf point of view, which is fantastic. Some old equipment, old clubs. It's sort of a regional location for the museum out of Sydney, which is down at Strathfield Golf Club. And I can't get in to see it myself because of lockdown. When I'm allowed to visit, they're not allowed to be open. But I look forward to getting in there. I've been doing a lot of research into some things and some golf courses and bits and pieces. So I look forward to being able to see it and hearing about the museum that's going to open up there at Tuncurry before too long as well. So a few things happening up there at Tuncurry, which is very good to see. Now, one final thing, and it's been a very, very long walk for Walking the Fairways this episode, guys. Like I said, there's plenty of news about. And one last point for you is, and it's probably more for the professional side of the industry, in Tasmania, I'm going to talk to you about a couple of jobs going that are available for people to take up at the one and only Barnbugle Dunes. Now, I've just recently, as of last week, spoken to Superintendent Phil Hill, the Super at Barnbugle, and he tells me that they're looking for greenkeeping staff. They need if you're listening, they need greenkeeping staff. They need you. If you're a greenkeeper, they need you. They've got 3 jobs going. And if you've been thinking about a move, thinking about attaining more experience or working at one of the best golf courses in Australia and indeed the world, this could be the job for you. This could be what you're looking for. Get in touch with Superintendent Phil. His email address is super@barnbugle.com.au, super@barnbugle.com.au. And just to get more details about what's on offer with these 3 jobs, because, like I said, this may be what you're looking for. It's a fantastic, incredible facility. We've all heard about it. It is better than you hear. I can tell you from experience, it's better than you hear. And if this is something that you want to try and upskill, you want to try and gain more experience, working under a fantastic team, in a tight-knit team on a beautiful part of Australia, in what is regarded as one of the best golf courses in the world, this is what you're looking for. So don't hesitate. Email Phil. If you want to, you can get in touch with me. I can pass your details on as well. But they need staff. They've lost a couple of staff over the last 12 to 18 months, and they need staff on course to help continue to offer what Barnbugle is, an absolutely incredible golf experience. That's what's going on down there. And I told Phil I'd mention it on the podcast. He was telling me that, they've been doing it tough, not having any applicants at all for these jobs, and I just couldn't believe it. It is difficult, granted, at the moment, to look at moving interstate and all those sorts of things. So there's a little bit involved if you're going to go through it. But if it's what you're looking for, if you know someone out there who's been thinking about it that works on a golf course, this is it. So like I said, super@barnbugle.com.au to get in touch with Superintendent Phil Hill, and he will be able to tell you a little bit more about the jobs on offer down there that they are searching for. So it could be you. Is that a line from a game show? Was that a TV show? Yeah, it was a TV show. It could be you. Welcome to the jungle, or on jungle, get me out of here, or something jungle. I don't know. But look, guys, that's Walking the Fairway. So much going on. Glad to be able to finally tell you some of those bits and pieces about what's happening. Stay tuned, stay up to date, stay with Walking the Fairways on the Golfing Greenkeeper podcast so I can keep giving you what's happening around the country. And thank you for striding out there and enjoying the walk with me. I love it. Thanks, guys. Let's get stuck into the next segment of the new and improved Golfing Greenkeeper podcast. Come one, come all, welcome down to my humble little working abode. I do welcome you to what I call the Greenkeepers Shed. Yes, this is the working heart of any golf course, and a place where I try to give you some information and insights onto the inner workings of a golf course, the reason why greenkeepers do the things that they do for you to enjoy the golf courses you get out there and play on, but also hopefully give you some tips along the way so that you can better read a golf course that you are about to go out and embark a round of golf on. Something that you can sort of read the lay of the land a little bit better, how the course is presented to you and how you might need to adjust your game to suit if you're playing different places. And like I said, its idea is to give you some tips along the way, so hopefully you can read the golf course better. That's the idea behind it, and educate you a little bit more about a few bits and pieces from the maintenance side of things, which ultimately everything we do as greenkeepers affects the way you play golf and how your golf ball reacts on a golf course. So this is the place to get all of that insight from. Today's segment of the Greenkeepers Shed in this new run format of the Golfing Greenkeeper podcast is about thatch. Yes, that really weird, strange, unusual word, thatch. You've probably seen, it's that time of the year in Australia, it's springtime. We're in the month of September, and you've probably seen your golf course that you play regularly at. You've probably seen that they're renovating the greens. You might have seen that they're renovating fairways. You might have heard that a golf course is renovating greens. You've probably seen pictures online on social media of golf courses renovations everywhere. And it's not in the terms of the block that we're talking about, renovating a house or rebuilding something. It's renovation of turf. And the essence of what that is where we get in there and we are able to go hard at some of the long-term accumulation and things that build up inside the soil profiles and around the canopy of our turf. That's what renovations is. We get to go in there really hard with some really cool, unique machinery, and it happens usually twice a year at this sort of level in spring and autumn when the grass is growing at its most and fastest for recovery purposes. That's why we do it now, is when everything's sort of really got good soil temperatures, it's not too hot in the air temperatures, and we can just go hard knowing full well that the grass will rejuvenate as fast as possible. That's why we do it at this time of the year. In winter, it's far too cold for growth usually, and in summer, it's far too hot for growth. So in those two extremes of hot and cold, the grass will slow down and just shut itself down so it doesn't get affected. And in springtime and in autumn time, when those temperatures are just not, it's comfortable temperatures for us humans. We love to get out there. Who doesn't love a good time in springtime morning to go for a walk, and the days are fantastic to get outside for a picnic if you can. This is COVID. I've got to be conscious of what you're allowed to get outside for. But it's a wonderful time of the year, and with that, you're starting to see trees wake up. You're seeing dormant trees, got their buds out, they're ready to wake up. You're seeing flowers starting to bloom, insects and bees are starting to get out there and hum. It's a beautiful time of the year, let's be honest. And not only does it happen in spring, but the temperature and the turn from summer to winter, it also happens in autumn. And that's the time when we can go out there and renovate. We've basically got a license to go and just go mental on turf and know that it's going to grow back. That's what's so good about it. So thatch is what I wanted to talk to you about, and I want to give you some insights into a few bits and pieces about it, how it affects golf, how it affects a golf course, how it affects turf. And thatch is basically the accumulation of dead and decaying organic matter, and that is in turf by way of leaf and root material usually. And that accumulates around the sort of soil surface interface on the turf, where the crown of the plant is. If you wiggle, you get in there with your little pitch mark repairer and you get down in your green surface at that interaction of where the grass leaf stops growing and you get to the soil where the roots start growing. That's around that sort of that region in the soil and turf profile. That's where we're talking. And over time, because we're trying to grow grass in essence, and we're trying to maintain grass that's growing, there's a lot of clippings that we drop after we cut the grass. It drops back in on the soil. We don't often clean it up. We do on greens, usually with catches obviously, but on fairways and on tees and on surrounds and on rough and all sorts of stuff, there's a lot of thatch accumulation, that dead, decaying organic matter. And with that comes a problem in effect. With that accumulation, high accumulation of that dead and decaying material, that waste material, and I call it a layer of mulch in the grass turf world, it's effectively a layer of mulch. When it becomes too thick, it causes problems. One of the more significant problems that it causes is the problem around, or the issue around, water's ability to penetrate the soil surface. You get a lot of repulsion with high thatch layer and high organic matter in that top soil profile, where water doesn't want to go down into the soil. It doesn't want to reach the root zone. You'll often find that water will puddle, it will sheet run off, it'll run off the sides before it soaks into the soil, because there's basically a blanket over the top of the grass. That's effectively what it becomes. It's a really sort of dense cushion layer of dead material, and it stops water from penetrating. So with high thatch levels, and let's focus on greens, and I'll talk about other turf areas on a golf course, but the focus is always on greens. That's where we see our most renovation, because that's the highest input area on a golf course, and it's where we play most of our golf. Let's face it, around 50% of your golf is played on a putting green. So that's where we're going to focus this sort of conversation, because that's where we do our renovations from in spring and in autumn, usually the highest intensity areas. So with that layer of thatch, we have issues with water penetration into the soil, and that then causes problems in a time like summer, for example, where water, when you need it to get into the soil, into the roots, so the plant can stay cool and take up water as it needs to when the temperatures are too high, we don't get that penetration. We don't get that water going, and we'll turn the sprinklers on, and it's less efficient and less effective because the water will start to run off at an earlier point when we throw the sprinklers on, or even when it rains. That first couple of millimeters of rainfall it might take to dampen the thatch layer. It's like a really dry sponge is effectively kind of how it works and operates. If you think of like a chamois, for example, that really sort of firm material, when it dries out, it's really firm and hard. And if you put water on it, it just runs straight off. It beads off, right? But if you leave water on it for a while or stick it in a bucket, it will soak it up eventually. It'll eventually soften and take that water in, but it takes a lot of effort to do it first when it's so dry. And that's how thatch works as well. So when we have a good millimeter or 2 millimeters or so of that initial rainfall, it's not doing anything. It's not reaching the roots. It's not going anywhere down into the soil where the grass needs it. It's just sitting on top, and it's being soaked up by the thatch, or it's running off, and it's running off the green surface and down in the rough somewhere before it starts to dissipate and soak in, where you might have less thatch, often in the rough areas. You'll see it's easier to get, you can probably stick your finger in the rough out off the side, a good 10 meters off the fairway. You can probably, scratch around and reach the soil pretty quickly. If you try and scratch around on a green with your finger, you got buckleys of reaching the soil. I can promise you that's how dense the grass becomes. And that's the other thing, is it's not only the dead material, but there's also density in the grass leaf itself, because we're trying to grow this beautiful carpet for you to putt on, that it's really difficult for water to penetrate that really, really thick forest of grass leaf. And in the past, in one of my very, very early episodes, I talked about renovations. And this is a little bit on that again, but we're seeing it out there now at springtime. So that's why I wanted to bring it to your attention again. So with that, we use mechanical means, usually in spring and autumn time, at renovation time, to remove thatch. One of the things about renovations is we've basically got two goals during a renovation period. And that is, 1, to reduce thatch levels, and 2, to increase oxygen levels in the soil, in the root zone, in the soil profile. That's really our only goal. But the difficulty is, it takes a lot of serious hard work to do it. And it's disruptive work. It's mechanical disruptive work that affects the putting surface, and that's why we have, core holes and top dressing, and you see fertilizer out there, and all sorts of things are going on in different ways, and everyone's got a different method that they use to do it. I love, when it comes to thatch control and thatch removal, I was a big fan of mechanical thatch removal, not necessarily by coring. A hollow core, when you see coring at renovations time, is basically physical removal of a percentage of your green surface. So when you're punching a core hole and you're pulling a little plug out, it's, the width of the size of your finger, basically, you're physically removing that amount of thatch. You're basically removing a percentage of the surface, of the green surface. And then over time, you top dress it straight afterwards, and it'll flatten out, and you'll then roll. So then the grass will then have to thin out effectively to try and push across, and you flatten out those holes, and they fill up with a bit of sand, and it'll cover over again to a point where in 4 weeks' time, you pretty much won't notice it happened. That's the idea. But one of my big favourite tools of thatch control and management is a scarifier or a verticutter. Two slightly different variants of the same machine, but I went to a point of using the verticutters more regularly. They fit on a greens mower attachment. You swap the cutting units on a greens mower over with the verticutting units, which is a smaller version of a scarifier. And they're called verticutters because they're vertical blades. They're like miniature circular saw blades. That's the best way I can describe it to you. Lots and lots of miniature circular saw blades, spinning and cutting little grooves and ripping out with their teeth the dead material and thinning out that canopy surface of the green. And when you do it with verticutters, it leaves less surface damage, and you can cut straight afterwards or you can roll straight afterwards, and you basically don't even know we've done it. You can just see those little tiny marks, the little like pencil grooves in the surface. And that's us just keeping it thin regularly. We would do it once every fortnight. That's how much I loved it. And it would just regularly keep them thin. But at renovations time, because there's that long-term accumulation every 6 months, my favourite tool was a walk-behind scarifier. We would go in there and absolutely rip shit out of the greens. It was my favourite time of the year. So our walk-behind, we would get a box trailer full. So you're talking sort of 6x4 feet, that is. Let's just clear it out. A little box trailer full. And the sides are about sort of 400 high. We would fill one of those with material that we were ripping out of the surface. That's how much stuff comes out of a green that was, around the sort of 300 square metre, 350 square metre mark. It was enormous amounts of material. But the best thing was you'd cut it and roll it after we did a little renovation, and you'd do a top dress it and so on. You would have a surface back in no time. And you guys wouldn't even really know what the differences were. But when we would irrigate, when we would rain, when we would go and fertilise, and we'd use some water to do that as well, whether it be liquids or granule, and then water them in with sprinklers, the water in the surface would just disappear. It'd go straight down into the soil profile, straight into the roots where the grass needs it. There'd be no pooling on the surface. There'd be no running off down the green sides off into the surrounds. The water would just go straight through to where we need it. And that was the beauty of doing something like that, is how amazingly well the green would then perform the way that we wanted it to, so we could get the best performance out of the turf, out of the green surface. It's just so good. Just so good. Thatch is such a big key to managing a putting surface and how it performs for us as golfers and for you guys as golfers. So when you're out playing golf, these are the little things I want you to pick up. When you're out playing golf, something to feel for when you're walking onto or playing a high thatch content putting surface is quite often it feels soft underfoot. It's a dead giveaway, because the water inputs are usually higher to maintain the surface. And not only that, but it really is, you're walking on a blanket, effectively. Like I said, it's just like a cushion. So because the water inputs are higher, it maintains its moisture levels so that the water can go through instead of running off, all those things that I mentioned. And then when you walk on it, it's soft. You might often see footprints. If you look back where you've walked, if you're an early morning player, you'll see little dents in the surface of where you've walked. Footprinting in a putting surface is a dead giveaway of high thatch levels. And usually it comes back to how many staff are looking after a golf course. Quite often, more often than not, that's usually a giveaway as well, because it does take effort, work, time, and energy to maintain your thatch levels to a minimum. There's also grass types involved in that. Some grass grow and have more thatch that they accumulate more thatch than other grasses, and there's those little nuances as well. But one of the dead giveaways as a golfer is the feel underfoot. If it's soft, it's usually thatchy. Not just wet, it's usually thatchy. And the way that then converts to your game is that you'll need to consider you're going to get, as a player, the greens you'll find, if you go out there and you'll notice a bit of footprinting or it feels soft when you walk across the green, you got to start considering that your ball's going to spin more if you land it on the green on the full. Spin's a big thing that happens in high thatch greens because of the moisture content that it retains in that very, very top layer of the surface. So spin's going to occur more regularly. With your chip shots, with your full wedge shots, even with your 7 irons in, you'll probably find that it won't release. It'll more often than not stop. It'll land, leave a dent, and stop. Leave a good indentation in that putting surface, a good lob mark that you've got to make sure you get out there and repair, as we always say. That's one of the things to consider when you feel that softness underfoot. That's a giveaway, and that's a point that affects your game of golf. That's high thatch. We don't want that as greenkeepers. Like I said, it has all the effects of problems to deal with from a maintenance perspective to get the best out of the turf, but we don't want to deliver to you guys as players a green that performs that way. We want to give you a green that's going to, play a lot firmer. And then the other things that occur when you have a high thatch content surface on a putting green, you'll often find the greens are a lot slower because the mower can't quite mow and keep the grass at an appropriate length. So when we set the height of the greens mower up, you're rolling across a soft blanket. So the surface sort of kind of gets pushed down before it gets cut. There's a little, we're talking millimeters. Greens are cut anywhere from 3 to 5 millimeters in height. Just try and picture that on a ruler. It's not very high at all. Now, if you put a blanket under that and you run a 45 kilo cutting unit head over it with the weight of the machine as well, you run those weights on top, it squashes that down and it moves around. All sorts of things happen with mowers, all sorts of things happen, and anything that affects our mowing height will then affect your golf. So if we have a soft surface that's got a bit of give for the 45 kilo heads that are cutting it, and it pushes it down as it rolls across it, have a guess what happens? You're not cutting it at the right height, you're cutting it a little bit longer. So it pushes it down when it cuts. So it's a little bit slower, it's very hard. And then you'll have issues where if they got little surface movements, little humps or little rises and hollows in your green surface, you'll find sometimes the mower blades will scalp a little bit. They'll leave a little groove, a little lower height of cut on the edge. It'll just start to cut in. You'll see some funny lines happening on greens. And like I said, sometimes you'll get a bumpy surface as well because the mower heads are moving. You'll often see 3 wheel mark indentations from the mowers, the ride-on mowers, more so than obviously the walk-behinds because they don't have the weight of the machine to drive across the green as well. So there's all these things that will affect the way that a golf green performs because of the problems of thatch. Like I said, we don't want it. We've got other problems to deal with from a maintenance perspective, let alone what we deliver to you from a playing perspective. So, like I said, it's that soft feel underfoot. It's the footprinting that you leave behind, the point loads from your weight on that small surface of the sole of your foot. These are all the things we think about, guys, when we're out there maintaining greens. It's to that level. It's how it affects your game. These are the things that I want you to start to look for. So when you go and play your local course, and your local course might be a course that has three staff members looking after it, and they get plenty of big flush of growth in springtime and through the later parts of spring into summertime. And the thatch accumulation just is quite high, depending on the grass types that are there, that they have on their green surface. And over time, it accumulates and it becomes a bit spongy, a little bit soft, a little bit difficult to maintain. And then by the end of summer, into the early parts of, the latter parts of summer, you find that they are performing pretty slow, lots of indentations, spinning a lot, different times, and then the opposite occurs when it dries out. If you have a tough summer, they become really hard really quick. By late afternoon, they're like concrete. And your balls will go from being soft and plugging to bouncing literally within a round at certain parts on the golf course. So they're the problems that we have again with thatch. It's so much easier to deliver a more consistent playing surface when the thatch levels are at a minimum. Like I said, all I'm trying to give you and trying to train you in a little roundabout way is to train your eyes on what to look for. So if you see that footprinting, it's going to spin. If you've had a bit of rain or if the sprinklers have been on because it's hot, the mornings are going to spin. The afternoons are going to bounce. That's what's going to happen. Look for that footprinting. Look for the lob marks. If I've played plenty of courses that I know that have really, really good greens, good high staff, labour force and their greenkeeping staff, and they're able to maintain their greens with minimum thatch, and you can get around there. They play consistent, they putt consistent, they're a bit more of a bouncing and running game of golf as well. And if you do have a flyer landed on the green on the full, and they're small greens that might bounce over the back or do something like that, you often can't find your pitch mark. But if you got good clean clubs and you got nice grooves and everything's playing well, you'll find that it'll bounce on and check up a little bit at the back end of the speed of the ball on the green, but you still can't find that pitch mark. So that's a little bit more of a give that, and the other giveaway is that sometimes you'll find greens with minimal thatch. They'll often have like soil in the lob mark because there's no thatch, there's no blanket, there's no dead matter layer. It's just purely soil. That's a really extreme level of minimum thatch. That water movement through the surface is incredible at that level. That's extreme. That's very, very good. High quality surface, plays consistent. Then that comes down to the soil interaction with your golf ball. That's a little bit of a different concern because it depends on the way the green soil profile was built. Whether they're older, whether they've got a more high a higher clay content in the soil. There might be darker soils as opposed to sandy soils, and that will then give a different characteristic. But for this conversation, I'm just talking about thatch itself and the way that interacts with your golf. So I reiterate, look for that sponginess in the surface when you walk. Look for your footprints and see how the green is performing on that more subtle level. And then you'll be able to determine how to adjust your game on your way around. Because quite often when they footprint, they're a little bit slower. That's how they perform. They're a little bit slower. So they're the things to consider when you're out there. And like I said, you'll often find that the greens that don't have as high a thatch layer and as higher and a lower organic matter content will perform and play a lot flatter, a lot smoother, and they'll be more consistent in their bounce for you, and that's how you'll be able to read the golf course as you're going around. That's what thatch can do to the characteristics of a golf green. And then further to that, we want to, like in renovation time, we want to try and remove thatch on other surface areas around the golf course. You'll often see scarifying, much bigger scarifiers go around doing fairways, ripping the fairways up, rooster tails out the back of the Sisis machine, for example, which I've seen. That's an incredible machine. Cooch really does give away a lot of thatch as it grows. Santa Ana, one of the detriments to Santa Ana, which is my favourite cooch grass and one of my favourite, sort of all multi-purpose grasses, one of its detrimental factors is that it is a high thatch accumulation plant. It really does pump out the thatch over 12 months and over a couple of years, and in a course where you can't really renovate your fairways to remove your thatch levels, you'll end up with a really thick surface, really dense surface, and what happens is the ball will sit really proud. It's like it's almost on a tee everywhere across the surface. The grass is that dense that it sits up like it's on a brush. Just turn your broom upside down and sit a golf ball on it. That's how it looks. And that's kind of good to play off, right? But then if you play your shot, you don't quite have a consistency with your divots and how the club then interacts with the soil and the surface of a golf course. That can be a little bit harder. But the difficulty there is maintenance, water, and so on. so we have difficulties getting the water through the profile. So other big mechanical machines ripping stuff out of the surfaces of your fairways, and cooch is a big one. Good to always sort of, as we say, tickle it, give it a little bit of a rip through the middle with those blades on the scarifiers and that sort of thing. So yeah, we have to monitor those other areas, and we have to be conscious about how much accumulation of that dead matter is around, because ultimately, as we thin it out, as we remove it, we're getting more airflow, less pest and disease pressure, less water hanging around the crown of the plant. All those things have an effect on how the grass performs. So we want to continue to keep thatch down, and it has the biggest factor of thatch in golf is bounce. That's one of the biggest factors it has is bounce. And if you have more there, it really does soften. Like I said, think of a blanket that just gives. As your ball hits it, it wants to give and take that energy away. So your ball doesn't bounce as well. You have a high thatch content, your ball won't bounce as well. There's not a lot of interaction with the soil surface, but like I said, there's a lot of effort involved. So to give you an idea, guys, around renovation period, this is it's one of the two big things that we deal with at renovation period, and it's why it's so important for us to manage from a maintenance perspective what thatch does with water movement and with nutrient movement and how the plants perform, but also what it does to your game of golf, how it affects your golf ball and how you get out there and the experience that you get and the consistency of golf that you get when you play the golf courses as well. So it's something it's hard to see, something that's not always there and obvious. And to be honest, most people don't even know how to look for it. You're out there to play golf. You're not out there to look at the turf in that level of detail. But the giveaway on a golf green is always footprints and the way that your pitch marks land on the green and the give that the golf ball's getting. So there you go, guys. I hope that's a bit of an insight for you. I hope when you go out there and play next, and you'll feel the firmness after renovations. One thing to keep in mind, when you go out there and play golf after the renos are finished on your course, you'll feel they're a little bit firmer to walk on. That top dressing, that sand on top helps dilute the thatch down a little bit as well. That's the other reason we top dress, not only to try and fill in the core holes a bit as well and that sort of thing, but also dilutes, and it gives that sand surface again where your golf ball's going to interact to. And that gives you your bounce. That gives all those interactions that we know about in golf, and that's why it's so important and how that affects your game of golf. So the other thing after a greens renovation is usually to get a bit more bounce because it's interacting with that sand layer, that top dressing we just put down. So that's some info, guys. I hope when you get out there you start to look for it a little bit more, and then you can adjust your game a little bit better dependent upon what you see and what you feel out there on the putting greens. So happy golfing, guys. Think about thatch layers when you get out there next and how it affects your game, and hopefully you can pick up on those points and adjust your game to suit and play better golf at the end of the day. That's what it's all about. So hopefully that was helpful to you guys. Thanks for coming on down to the Greenkeepers Shed. Well, thank you again, ladies and gentlemen, for listening so intently through the new format style episode of the Golf and Greenkeeper podcast. I really do appreciate your time and effort, as always, into listening to the podcast, and I hope you get something out of it. Once again, at least a bit of news if that's helpful to you in preparing at the end of the day, preparing for where you might go and play golf next as well. Thinking about what's next when you can get out there and do a little bit of travel around the place and experience some different golf courses. So I hope you got something out of that. I hope you got something out of the Greenkeepers Shed there as well, talking about thatch levels and how that can affect your game of golf and what to do and what to look for to read the golf course that you're playing and how to adjust your game to suit there too. And something that, we strive to deliver better golf courses for you as greenkeepers. So look, I say thank you so many times, and I try to make sure that comes across in a genuine way, because I really do appreciate it so much for listening. I never probably thought that I would have so many people listening. The numbers that I can't believe of how many people have downloaded the episodes of the podcast and listened to it. So it's greatly appreciated. I feel humbled by it every time I log on to see what's going on, and every time I report a podcast for you as well to listen to. So it's wonderful to have you on board and continue to stay on board and join with me along the journey. and hopefully you keep enjoying everything that I can give to you. Now, like, share, subscribe that's the tagline that everyone leaves at the end of their podcast. So I will ask you to please like, share, subscribe. If you haven't subscribed to me to get the notifications on when the new podcast episode is out, please go to your podcast app and click SUBSCRIBE, subscribe. I think I spelled that correctly. Anyway, look, please do that. Again, all those numbers help. All those things help to be able to spread the word around and get it out there. And if you know someone who might be interested in this sort of stuff and in these types of topics of greenkeeping and how it affects your game, little tips to think of when you're out there playing golf, and also staying up to date with what's happening, and some wonderful interviews that I'll be bringing to you soon as well, please pass it along to them. Send them a link. I can't do that because I don't know them. Clearly, I don't know these friends of yours, but send them the link, pass it around, and so I can get a few more people following, and we can have some more discussions, albeit as well on social media, which I do greatly enjoy. Big fan of those discussions on different topics as well. So and join in on social media too. It's a good lot of fun, good conversations had there as well. So like, share, subscribe. As I say, I really appreciate it. And look, I'm just going to throw it out there. Next week, next episode of the podcast, I've got an interview coming, and it's with a greenkeeper. It's with a superintendent. And, well, you know what? Let's forget the teasing. It's Superintendent Phil Hill from Barnbugle in Tasmania. I've spoken to Phil. He's keen to come on the podcast, ready to have a few questions and give you insights on one of the most wonderful golf courses, two of the most wonderful golf courses, three. Why do I stop at two? It's three, 2.5, three courses as well. Barnbugle Dunes, the Lost Farm, and Bugle Run, the short course. So Phil Hill will be joining me for a wonderful conversation, I'm sure, about some insight into Barnbugle and what goes on behind the scenes down there to deliver what is quite possibly one of the best golf experiences in the country, and indeed the world, as we all know. And I say we all know because if you've been there, you know, and if you haven't been there, I'm sure you've read about it. And for those that haven't, if you're new to the podcast and you're not sure about Barnbugle, you're new to golf, you're trying to work out where to go, what to see, where to play, and learn some more things along the way, then you'll hear about this from an insider's point of view. And Phil's a lovely guy, and I'm really excited about bringing him on the podcast so we can chat about a few things from golf. So he will be the first interview that I've had on the podcast under the new segment called Keeper of the Greens. I've had it on Instagram before, but we're bringing it to the podcast for a bit more of a long-form conversation, and really excited to have Phil on board. So stay tuned for that. If you click subscribe, you will get a notification when that episode comes out. So please go over there and do it, because it's coming to your ears as soon as I can get it out. Thanks, guys. Thanks once again. Look forward to seeing you next week. As always, you hit 'em clean and we'll keep 'em green.